everyone, I'm Carol Ann Riddell, and welcome to Arts in the City. First up, the Metropolitan Museum of Art is world famous for its art collection inside. But did you know there's also more incredible art outside? Donna Hanover has the story.
Four regal bronze animal sculptures have been filling the niches on the facade of New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art. They are the work of artist Jeffrey Gibson, who grew up living in the U.S., Germany, and Korea, and is also of Cherokee descent and a member of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. Met curator Jane Panetta says Gibson was commissioned to create art for the niches because he's an artist whose work has been varied and compelling.
He had also recently done the U.S. Pavilion at the Venice Biennale, and so I think that felt like an important project that really showed the breadth and importance of his work.
That was the first solo exhibition of an indigenous artist ever for the U.S. Pavilion. Gibson's work there included vivid colors, geometric designs, native dance performances, and his beaded punching bags that are especially well known. For the Met, his focus on animals was somewhat new in his work. He felt it could be a reminder that we share the environment with animals, and they represent certain qualities.
And a deer symbolizes kindness and intuition, and the coyote is an animal that's thought of as a teacher and a trickster.
The Met produced a video that shows Gibson creating the sculptures and installing them. In it, he says the hawk is a messenger.
This regalness that happens in the face of the hawk and this intense stare, for viewers, you're looking at them from down here and looking up. The animals are looking out. It gives them a sense of worldliness.
Of the four Jeffrey Gibson niche sculptures, the most popular is reportedly the squirrel. Gibson likes them because they plan and prepare for the future. This one has a crown of acorns in addition to the big one that it carries, and the one's decorating its blue cloak. From start to finish, the sculptures took more than 2 years. Gibson worked in his upstate New York studio with his team of about 18 people.
To make these sculptures, Jeffrey produced actual maquettes in his studio, using wood, feathers, hide, found objects.
All four of the sculptures were made using blue foam underneath. This is driftwood that was pulled from the banks of the Hudson River. And then this rawhide was used to wrap around. And it's kind of incredible sculptural material because it dries very hard. It's the same material that you would find in like a drum. And then most of it has been sculpted using this oil-based clay.
In a talk to launch the commission, Gibson explained that after the maquettes were built, they were 3D scanned, and a huge amount of sculpting was then done online to make sure the creatures and their regalia kept their textures.
And part of that has to do with just being able to enable the bronze to flow through the mold.
Each 10-foot-tall figure was made in pieces, which were then assembled. How did he get the color? Because you don't usually see bronzes with this kind of color.
I know, the patinaing or the painting of the bronze that you see here is really exceptional.
She says Gibson worked with the foundry to make patina colors that could live brightly on the bronze. Sometimes people are surprised to see sculptures on the facade of the Met. In fact, many never realized before that the niches are there.
So the niches actually have been a part of the facade for over 100 years, since 1902. And in the initial renderings for the niches, there were images drawn of classical sculptures in them. So I think they were always intended to hold sculpture. That said, no sculpture goes into the niches for over 100 years. When the Met's current director, Max Holein, joins the museum in 2018, he sees the niches as a really wonderful opportunity to invite a living artist to do a commission. First artist to inaugurate the facade commissions was the artist Wengeshi Mutu. This was in 2019. The second facade project was by the artist Carol Beauvais. Beauvais is an artist that works much more abstractly. In 2022, the British artist Hugh Locke made a series of 4 gilded sculptures that were referencing the idea of trophy. The fourth project was by the Berlin-based artist Nairi Bagramian. Following Nairi's project was a project by the artist Lee Bull, Korean-based sculptor, installation artist.
The niche project, now called the Genesis Facade Commission, is very popular.
I think it's been a wonderful way to greet visitors as they're coming into the museum, or to entice visitors to come into the museum, right? This is a public art project. You can experience this when the museum's closed. You can experience this on the steps of the museum.
In the fall, another artist will fill these slots. The Gibson animals have their final day in the niches on June 9th. The artist explains that people who stop to see them help achieve the goals in his mind and heart.
But they're meant to be available to people from all walks of life. They look like superheroes from a distance. And then as it pulls you in, things unfold and they draw you in and they continue to pull you to look closer.
I'm Donna Hanover for Arts in the City.
Storytelling. It's an art form as old as we are, and an organization called the Moth is dedicated to preserving it through true stories told live.
So I can feel my face on the floor. My cheek is pressing into the carpet, and I don't want to be there. I'm crying.
Artist Peter Aguero has been sharing stories at the Moth for years, including this one that he told us at the nonprofit's Manhattan headquarters.
My wife, Sarah's holding me like the Pieta, and she's brushing my hair and reading my tarot cards and trying to get me to figure out what's going on. I'm trying to make a new show, and I can't do it. I just don't care enough to do it. And I'm at my wit's end. And Sarah looks down at me, and she's holding me, and she says, "Peter, you need to take a pottery class."
Since its inception in 1997, the Moth has told more than 65,000 stories, live without notes, on stages big and small. The storytellers come from all walks of life. You might see a Nobel laureate or your neighbor. The focus, true and personal stories. Jody Powell is a story director at the Moth.
Because this is the most authentic of art forms, if you think of it. At the Moth, we believe that everybody has a story to tell, and that there's a place, and we're creating a platform so people can share those stories and teaching them that your story matters, and especially in this world where so many people feel divided and isolation is at the top of everybody's tongue. I feel that when you come back to the art form of storytelling, it really breaks down barriers. It has a way of transforming they and them into us and we. And when I came to the Moth, I remember a storyteller saying, you know, when I share my story, it's very hard for you to hate me. It's very hard for you not to understand the decision I've made. And it's very hard for you not to understand who I am at my core.
The organization and its name were born on a back porch.
The story goes that at night, when friends would gather on the porch to tell their stories, they would move inside when it got dark. And there's a little hole in the screen, and the moths would find their ways through the hole all the way to the light bulb right over where the stories were happening. And when our founder came to New York, he wanted to create the same feeling of gathering in a warm space, sharing stories amongst friends, listening when somebody else is sharing.
The scope has now expanded dramatically. The Moth has community and education programs, books, a radio hour, and podcast. So how are the stories found? Through open mic competitions, team members on the lookout for stories, and recommendations, but also what's known as the Moth pitch line.
Folks can call in and tell a 2-minute story. We ask for no cliffhangers. Tell the part of the story that's the juiciest. Tell the part of the story that will make me have to call you back and ask more.
And what makes for a successful story? It comes down to a simple but complex idea, as Peter explains it.
In a perfect world, the real difference between a story being told on a stage versus a story being told after dinner would have no difference. The thing that elevates a story for an audience is that it's presentational, but it's still intimate. And I think that comes with the honesty. So that's really the trick, is just to tell the truth. The grooves in the bowl match the grooves with my own fingers. I took this dirt and I shaped it and they cooked it, and now it's a real thing that exists in the world. I can do anything that I need to do now I can make what I need to make. I don't have to live in the part that hurts. All I have to do is the same thing that I did during that class. I just make a move, I take a breath, and the shape changes. I make a move, I take a breath, and the shape changes. Thank you.
Cooper Hewitt is turning up the volume on design. A new exhibit explores how the things we see, from music players to album covers, shape what we hear. Our Andrew Falzone takes us inside.
In this modern age of streaming, music has never been more accessible. A new exhibit at Cooper Hewitt not only allows you to listen to music, it wants you to look at music, because before sound hits your ears, design has already shaped the experience. From the click wheel on an original iPod, which made an entire music collection portable, to the clack of buttons on a Walkman that made music private, to 80s boomboxes that made it quite public. Even posters and album covers that trigger memories of a favorite concert. And that's the idea behind Art of Noise, a show built around the sight of sound.
For a design museum like the Cooper Hewitt to be hosting an exhibition that tackles design but also opens up this door, this kind of pathway to this other creative output, is really special.
Joseph Becker is the curator of architecture and design at SF MoMA, where the exhibit debuted, and then worked with Cooper Hewitt to adapt it for the New York presentation. Occupying the museum's entire third floor, Art of Noise traces centuries of music through design, from the objects that carried the sound to the graphics that gave it identity, early phonographs that brought music out of the concert hall and into the home, retro-designed hi-fi systems that made listening part luxury, part ritual, the iconic Sony Walkman with those tinny orange headphones that made music private and portable, and the headphone's modern iteration, the Apple AirPod, ditching the headband and the cable for a wireless, higher fidelity, noise-canceling listening experience.
It's a really interesting kind of predicament when the exhibition is focused, the larger exhibition is focused on the visual artifacts of this experience that we have with our ears.
But that's not to say the exhibit is all eyes and no ears. One of its most charming elements is Choir. Created by the Swedish audiophiles at Teenage Engineering, it's a set of wooden sound sculptures, each one with its own name, personality, and electronic voice. Programmed with different vocal ranges, they sing together in harmony like a chorus. With a custom lighting show to highlight which is singing and when, they turn the gallery itself into an instrument.
I think that music is incredibly connective for all of us. It's often, how we find our people in our communities early on.
And that sense of connection is built into the exhibit. Teenage Engineering doesn't just design the sound sculptures, they also designed Sound Station, a wide, comfy spot where visitors can gather, sit, even lie back and actually listen together. Put on the headphones, press play, and the gallery shifts from objects on display to a hands-on, ears-in experience, a curated way to discover music through design. But for a communal listening experience, one can head to the first floor to experience Devin Turnbull's Hi-Fi Pursuit listening room, Dream Number 3.
We've commissioned Devin to create an experience for all of us to have a very rarefied, kind of deeply transformative listening journey.
Love these horns, the way they have very controlled dispersion and a very large mouth area.
That listening room is the work of multidisciplinary artist Devin Turnbull, also known as Ogis. He handcrafts high-fidelity sound systems designed to completely envelop the listener, a feast for the eye surpassed only by its symphony for the ear. He also builds bespoke commission systems for private clients, and this installation is the latest in his Listening Room Dream series, built for a rare kind of communal listening experience.
Well, the listening experience has become a lot less tangible than it once was, you know, than what I'm sort of after, right? I want to have an experience with music which is like very physical.
Also on display is a stunning array of visual designs like these flyers from the early days of hip-hop, concert posters and album covers, all with direct ties to New York, like a vintage James Brown poster for the legendary Apollo Theater, a psychedelic-era Jimi Hendrix Experience bill from Fillmore East, and a line of legends from the folk scene. They're just some of the dozens on display.
The larger exhibition is focused on the visual artifacts of this experience that we have with our ears.
Devin Turnbull's Hi-Fi Pursuit Listening Room Dream Number 3 will be on display until July 19th, and Art of Noise will be on display till August 16th. I'm Andrew Falzone for Arts in the City.
New York City is constantly evolving, from changing storefronts to renovated buildings. But one restaurant has stood the test of time, lasting more than a century. Neil Rosen stops by a 101-year-old Luncheonette.
On the corner of 83rd Street and Lexington Avenue on Manhattan's Upper East Side sits something you just don't see anymore, a Luncheonette. It's not a replica, but the real thing. It's Lexington Candy Shop, and it's been serving New Yorkers for over 100 years. There was a time when places like this were everywhere, hundreds of them across the city. But today, this is the last surviving original Luncheonette in all of New York. Walk through the door, and it feels like you've stepped through a time machine. The counter stools, the soda fountain, the no-nonsense menu, it's all still here. And that's not by accident. Co-owner John Phyllis is the reason. It's a third-generation family business, and he's been behind the counter for decades, preserving not just the flavorful recipes, like their iconically delicious egg creams, but the rhythm of a classic New York lunch counter.
I'm the third generation. My grandfather opened the store in 1925. I started here when I was 1970, when I was able to ride the subway by myself. At that point, my father said, okay, you can come and work now.
What happened? Why did it disappear?
The immigrants that were doing this they all retired. This is a very intense labor stuff. The children did not want to come in. I'm an exception.
What is the best-selling item here? And what is your personal favorite item then?
Right now is a Coca-Cola float, because we went viral with that. You know, with the Coca-Cola that we make, and we use Bassett's ice cream, which is fantastic from Philadelphia. For me, I always had a cheeseburger. People come in for our pancakes from around the world.
Oh, you gotta come here. And due to social media, it's become a viral sensation, with lines to get in stretching all the way down the block.
They put it out all over the world, all over the world. I had people here from Siberia. I had a family here from Mongolia. The kids wanted to come here. I go, where you from? Mongolia. Really?
Lexington Candy Shop is also sought after for many movie shoots and TV shows. 3 Days of the Condor with Robert Redford was shot on location here. Winona Ryder and Peter Sarsgaard did a movie scene here, as did The Nanny Diaries with Scarlett Johansson. Law & Order SVU filmed at the famous lunch counter, and even Broadway got in on the act, as the musical Waitress used the locale for the cover of their playbill featuring Sarah Bareilles. Plus, this last standing Luncheonette is also a magnet for tons of famous people. And rock stars like Paul McCartney and Bruce Springsteen come in regularly. And that's just a couple of the luminaries who've eaten here.
You're the only place in New York, the only place that I've ever heard of, period, that makes a Coca-Cola with the syrup.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make one of those?
Absolutely. So this is the way the Coca-Cola was done back in the 1890s all the way up to 30s. So first, has to be about half the glass in ice. And yes, there is a science to this too. Then you put, this is the Coca-Cola, syrup itself. That looks good. And you gotta stir it the whole time. There's your Coca-Cola right there.
What's your favorite part of working here, owning here, and having this place?
I like being here because it's part of the fabric of New York and the Upper East Side. I like the area. Basically, I like the history of the city and where the last one's doing it, and somebody's got to keep it going.
For more information about this delicious luncheonette, just go to their website at lexingtoncandyshop.net. At 83rd Street and Lexington Avenue in the heart of Manhattan on the Upper East Side, for Arts in the City, I'm Neil Rosen.
Vampires have captivated audiences for generations. They do well on screen and in books, but when they step into the spotlight on stage, something gets lost in the shadows. Patrick Pacheco, host of CUNY TV's Theater, All the Moving Parts, sits down with theater experts to explore why the allure of vampires just never dies.
The vampire has long been a fascinating figure in storytelling, and theater has embraced it in many different ways. Yet for all its allure, the vampire musical or play has rarely succeeded. And still, artists keep coming back to these creatures of the night. This season, we're seeing two shows about vampires: Blood Love, the off-Broadway musical, and The Lost Boys, which is now in its world premiere on Broadway. To explore the seductive appeal of vampires on stage, we're joined by Ruthie Fierberg, executive editor of Broadway News, Jackson McHenry, critic for New York Magazine, and Margaret Hall, musical theater historian at Playbill. Welcome to you all, and a special welcome to Margaret, who's joining us for the first time. I hear you're a vampire expert.
Yes, I'm 100% a vampire girl through and through. I have a huge amount of love for this archetype.
Great. Well, we're about to sink our teeth into the subject. And Ruthie, what is it that makes the vampire tale so inherently theatrical?
Well, because, pun intended, the stakes are pretty high when it comes to vampires, right? Even though it's not life and death for the vampire, it is a turning point always in the life of the human that the vampires are after. And it is an existential question of, do you want to come to the dark side and have all that comes with it, which is, you know, immense power, but also and immortality, but there are pros and cons to that immortality. I think it makes us question our own human experience. And then I also think that there's just an innate, there's a sexy, mysterious quality to the vampire that will always draw people in, and that mysteriousness as well, I think, is very, very theatrical.
I think it is that sort of heightened quality and register of them, which I think is also can pose a risk for a theater, because it's very easy to go into a sort of an overblown kind of vampire thing. They're very heightened. There's a lot of sort of connection to sort of European lore and this sort of high wealth nobility thing that's also very queer-coded, which can be fun for theater makers to play with, but also can sort of risk putting off mass audiences in ways that we'll talk about. And so that sort of grandeur and drama, which lends itself to rock opera or pure opera or musical theater in some cases, is a lot of fun to play with and approach, but also I think a challenge to figure out how exactly you want to channel in the right way.
For me, it's about how sensory they are. Vampires are a total feast for the senses. They are hunger incarnate. That's what they're born of mythologically. And you can really play with that sort of sensory work on stage. They're so elevated, both in terms of sense and also in their interactions. You can get very dramatic very fast.
They are so much a part of pop culture, in literature, film.
I can't stand this any longer.
Television.
Vampires think about one thing, and one thing only: drinking your blood.
And yet, theater just can't seem to get it right. What makes it so resistible to being adapted to the stage? You brought the risk up, Jackson.
Well, I think it is part of the sort of the grandeur and splendor of it, and then also how to properly render the horror aspects of it. I think horror is something has also sort of been approached in many different ways on Broadway, and the ability to figure out successful, to make it scary. And it's all hard, especially in musical form, to balance the tones of a form that can naturally lend itself to a lot of humor and sort of camp with the sort of sepulchral quality that you kind of want and the sort of thrill of it. And so I think that makes it very enticing to theater makers and also sometimes a challenge for audiences.
I think a big part of it is the fact that we are here in America and there is a Puritan streak over here. There are very successful vampire musicals outside of the United States. It's Broadway that's behind the curve here. Temps de Vampire is still running in Europe. Dracula the Musical is a smash hit in South Korea that regularly is revived every October. But people get skittish about getting gross with their sexy theater over here, and you kind of can't have vampires without blood, and you also very much cannot have vampires without queer sexuality. So people pull their punches, and if you pull your punches theatrically, your audiences don't stick around.
I also think that regardless of the subject, you have to know your tone. You can do it's a musical, a play about anything. And you have to know the world you are building and the tone that you're creating and living within.
What we also have on Broadway now is The Lost Boys.
I wanna belong to someone. Someone make me feel like a die. Give me what I never had. Be the place that I belong.
It's being directed by Michael Arden. What do you suppose are its hopes and its challenges?
I think its hopes and its challenges are honestly the same of any musical, not necessarily any vampire musical, though of course it is up against the lore, as we said, of the vampire musical. I also think they're going for a big sexiness play.
Yeah.
Like
the sort of seduction of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Lost Boys in this iteration are a literal boy band. And Ali Louis Borsky's character, David, is like the lead singer of the boy band. And there's a seduction to boy bands, whether they're secret vampires or not.
Well, this show is anything but bloodlust. Thanks to the three of you. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
I'm Patrick Pacheco, and we'll see you next time when the curtain rises on Theater All the Moving Parts.
That is our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. A quick reminder to check us out on social media. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Carol Ann Riddell. We'll see you next time on Arts in the City. To support your favorite programming here at CUNY TV, please consider donating at tv.cuny.edu/donate.